The 7 alien representatives huddled together at the far end of the observation deck, their whispered conversations just beyond human hearing range. Alina gave them their moment, turning instead to review the ship's performance metrics on her wrist display. The Prometheus had exceeded even her expectations, and she'd helped design the damn thing. Admiral, Lieutenant Santos approached with a datapad in hand. Engineering reports all systems nominal. The quantum displacement array is operating at 102% of projected capacity. Alina raised an eyebrow. 102%. Tell Commander Pottle to dial it back. We don't need to push the envelope today. Yes, Mom. Santos hesitated, glancing toward the alien delegation. Should I arrange for their shuttle to be prepared? Not yet. I think our guests might have some questions first. She was right. The Kithran scientist, Telix, detached from the group and scuttled forward on his 4 articulated limbs. Despite his alien physiology, Alina recognized the conflicting emotions playing across his features, scientific curiosity battling with deep-seated alarm. Admiral Reyes, he began, mandibles clicking nervously between words. Your demonstration was most impressive. However, I must inquire about the fundamental principles behind the quantum displacement array. Our model suggests such technology should be centuries beyond your current development stage. Alina offered a diplomatic smile. Your models were based on the information your conclave chose to share with us. Humanity had to fill in the gaps ourselves. But the power requirements alone were solved by Dr. Winter's breakthrough in antimatter catalyzation. She finished for him. We found that when you adjust the resonance frequency of the containment field to match the quantum signature of the target matter, you can achieve exponentially greater efficiency. Telix's secondary eyes widened. That approach violates the Heisenberg conservation principle. It doesn't violate it, Alina corrected gently. It circumvents it by operating in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Your physicists theorized this was possible 3 centuries ago, but never pursued it because your energy infrastructure couldn't support the initial catalyst reaction. The Zephyrian diplomat, who had been silent until now, floated forward. His translucent body rippled with bands of dark purple, a sign of extreme agitation. You adapted theories from our scientific archives, he accused. Archives we shared in good faith during cultural exchange. Archives you carefully curated to omit anything too advanced, Alina countered. But you missed something important about humans, Ambassadors Kral. We don't just absorb information. We question it. When we found gaps in your physics models, we didn't assume they were impossible to fill. We saw them as puzzles waiting to be solved. The Vordak military attaché stepped forward, his armored exoskeleton clicking with each deliberate movement. Unlike the others, his species had evolved as apex predators, and it showed in his bearing. The Conclave will not allow such weaponry to exist, he stated flatly. The technology is too destabilizing. Alina's expression hardened slightly. With respect, Commander Gruvak, the Conclave doesn't have the authority to allow or disallow human technological development. You denied us full membership, which means your restrictions don't apply to us. Then perhaps it is time to reconsider Earth's status, offered the Hedarian representative, her crystalline form refracting light in complex patterns. Clearly, your species has matured faster than anticipated. The ship's comms officer interrupted with perfect timing. Admiral, encrypted transmission from Earth Command. Priority Alpha. Alina nodded. If you'll excuse me, ambassadors, please, enjoy the view. Lieutenant Santos will see to any needs you might have while I take this call. As she strode from the observation deck, Alina felt their eyes tracking her movement. The balance of power had shifted today, and they all knew it. In her 20 years of military service, she'd learned that respect was rarely freely given. Sometimes it had to be earned through demonstration of strength. In her private ready room, the message from Earth Command was exactly what she'd expected. The Conclave High Council had convened an emergency session and was demanding the immediate surrender of the Prometheus. The match had been struck. Now, they would see what burned. The stunned silence that followed Chen's revelation stretched for several uncomfortable seconds. The holographic projections of other Prometheus-class vessels, some still under construction, others already operational, rotated slowly above the council chamber, each displaying the same distinctive energy signature that had terrified the conclave observers aboard the original ship. "Impossible," the Hadarian representative finally whispered, her crystalline form vibrating at a frequency that indicated extreme distress. "Your industrial capacity couldn't support this level of production." Chen tucked his hands behind his back, a deliberate posture of calm confidence. "Another miscalculation on your part. While you were monitoring our official shipyards, we were building others in the asteroid belts, on the dark side of Luna, and in the clouds of Jupiter. Places your surveillance networks never thought to look because they seemed too hostile or primitive for advanced construction." The Vordak military representative slammed one armored appendage against the council table, leaving a visible dent in the supposedly indestructible material. "This is an act of war, is it?" Chen asked mildly. "Developing our own technology within our own sovereign space, using principles freely available in the scientific archives you shared. I would call it self-determination." Frilvax's translucent tentacles coiled tightly, a sign of intense concentration among Zephyrians. "Ambassador Chen, surely you understand the Conclave's position. Some technologies are restricted not out of prejudice, but for the safety of all civilized species. And who decides which species are civilized enough to be trusted with advanced technology?" Chen countered. "The founding members of the Conclave, who have systematically ensured their continued dominance by restricting others' development. That sounds less like safety and more like imperialism, dressed in diplomatic clothing." The Kithran scientific advisor scuttled forward, his multiple limbs moving in agitation. "The technology you've developed, it could destabilize the fabric of space-time itself if misused or improperly calibrated. Our simulations suggest. Your simulations are based on incomplete understanding," Chen interrupted. "Our scientists solved the calibration issues 6 months ago. The Prometheus and its sister ships pose no danger to space-time stability. In fact, they incorporate safeguards your scientists haven't even conceptualized yet." Chen tapped his wrist device again, and the holographic display shifted to show technical schematics, partial ones, carefully selected to demonstrate advanced safety systems without revealing core operational principles. "We're not reckless," he continued in a softer tone. "Humanity has no desire for war or domination. We simply refuse to remain in the technological playpen you've constructed for us." The council chamber erupted into multiple overlapping conversations as representatives conferred with their advisors and with each other. Chen stood patiently in the center, a small island of calm amid the chaos. His earpiece translated enough of the crosstalk to confirm what he already knew. The conclave was divided on how to respond. Srilvax finally raised his primary appendages, a gesture that traditionally called for silence in conclave proceedings. The chamber gradually quieted. "The High Council will need to deliberate on this matter in private," he announced. "Ambassador Chen, you will be summoned when we have reached a decision." Chen bowed slightly, just enough to acknowledge the statement without conveying deference. "Of course, but I would remind the Council that time is a factor here. Admiral Rise awaits your response, as do the captains of 12 other Prometheus-class vessels currently deployed throughout human space." He turned to leave, but paused at the chamber's threshold. "One more thing, counselors. The Prometheus technology was developed for defense, not aggression. How you respond today will determine whether we view the Conclave as a potential ally or a potential threat." As the massive doors sealed behind him, Chen allowed himself a small smile. In the secure antechamber, he activated his quantum communicator to contact Admiral Reyes. "They're rattled," he reported. "Deliberating now. Expect a blockade authorization within the hour." Belena's voice came through with perfect clarity despite the distance. "Understood. The pieces are in position. By the time they decide to move against us, it will already be too late. They've deployed interdiction buoys at each of the standard jump points, Wei observed, highlighting several clusters on the tactical display. Standard conclave containment protocol. They're treating this like a Class 3 quarantine operation. Elena studied the formation. The conclave fleet had arranged itself in 3 concentric spheres around the solar system. The outer sphere consisted primarily of lighter vessels, corvettes and frigates positioned to detect and track any human ships attempting to flee. The middle sphere comprised heavier cruisers and battleships, their weapons systems charged and ready. The inner sphere, closest to Earth, contained the 3 massive dreadnoughts, each nearly the size of a small moon. They still don't understand what they're dealing with, Elena mused. They're using textbook formations designed to counter conventional FTL technology. Lieutenant Okafor at Communications looked up from her station. Admiral, we're receiving encrypted transmissions from the other Prometheus-class vessels. All report-ready status. Acknowledged. Tell them to maintain position and await my signal. Elena turned to her XO. Commander Wei, what's the status of our civilian transports? Wei tapped a series of commands into the console, bringing up a separate display showing dozens of green icons scattered throughout the solar system. All in position, Admiral. The conclave ships have completely ignored them, as expected. They're focused entirely on military vessels. And that's their mistake, Elena said with a tight smile. They still think in compartmentalized terms, military versus civilian, warship versus transport. They haven't grasped that humanity has taken a more integrated approach. Throughout the solar system, seemingly ordinary cargo haulers, passenger liners, and mining vessels began subtle power redirections. None looked remotely like the Prometheus. They maintained their utilitarian appearances. But deep within their systems, advanced technology hummed to life, technology that had been deliberately disguised as mundane equipment. On the Zephyrian flagship, sensors would be registering these power fluctuations, but categorizing them as non-threatening. After all, their intelligence had thoroughly documented the capabilities of Earth's civilian fleet. What they didn't know was that those capabilities had been deliberately misrepresented for years. The main view screen shifted to show the Zephyrian admiral, his skin flushed an angry purple. Human vessel, you will power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. Your reckless development of prohibited technology threatens the stability of this entire sector. Comply immediately or face the consequences. Elena straightened her uniform and nodded to Lieutenant Okafor to open a channel. When she spoke, her voice was calm and measured. Admiral Skvolis, this is Admiral Elena Reyes of the UES Prometheus. Your blockade of Earth constitutes an act of aggression against a sovereign power. We have no desire for conflict, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. The Zephyrian's translator struggled to convey the complex harmonics of his response. Your primitive species has stumbled upon technology you cannot possibly comprehend. The safety protocols alone were the first systems we developed, Elena interrupted. The Prometheus isn't here to fight a war, Admiral. It's here to prevent one. To ensure that humanity is treated as an equal partner in galactic affairs, not as a child race to be patronized and controlled. She signaled to cut the transmission and turned to her weapons officer. Lieutenant Park, are we within range for the demonstration? The young officer nodded, his fingers hovering over his console. Yes, Admiral. All conclave vessels are within the field projection envelope. Excellent. Elena took a seat in her command chair, feeling the subtle embrace of the inertial dampeners. Signal all human vessels to activate their quantum harmonic buffers. We don't want our own ships affected by what comes next. Throughout the solar system, civilian vessels that had been ignored by the conclave blockade acknowledged the command. Every ship, from the smallest mining drone to the largest colony transport, had been equipped with protective systems specifically designed for this moment. Elena leaned forward slightly. Initiate the Alcubierre-Einstein manifold. Minimum disruption profile, standard dispersal pattern. Let's show them what happens when you corner humanity. Lieutenant Park's fingers danced across his console. Manifold initiating in 3, 2, 1. The Prometheus shuddered slightly as its primary system engaged, not a weapon as the Conclave feared, but something far more revolutionary. A ripple of distorted spacetime emanated from the ship, invisible to the naked eye, but devastatingly effective against the blockade's electronic systems. What followed would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The bridge of the Prometheus fell silent as all eyes fixed on the main view screen. The effect began at the heart of the conclave formation, a subtle ripple that spread outward like a stone dropped in still water. One by one, the imposing warships of the blockade fleet flickered and went dark, their running lights fading to nothing, their engines shutting down mid-burn. The precise engineering behind the Alcubierre-Einstein manifold was one of humanity's most closely guarded secrets. Unlike conventional weapons that damaged or destroyed their targets, the manifold created a temporary phase variance in spacetime that selectively interfered with certain energy frequencies. Specifically, the frequencies used in standard conclave power distribution systems. Outer sphere completely neutralized, reported Lieutenant Park, his voice barely above a whisper despite the momentous event unfolding before them. Middle sphere at 87% and counting. Elena watched as the massive dreadnoughts in the inner sphere began to drift, their stabilizing thrusters offline, their fearsome weapons arrays now harmless. In less than 30 seconds, the pride of the Conclave's combined fleets, 347 warships, had been rendered completely inert. Confirm status of life support systems on affected vessels, Elena ordered, her voice firm but calm. Lieutenant Okafor worked her console rapidly. All conclave vessels report life support functioning at optimal levels. Artificial gravity, atmosphere processing, and emergency lighting all unaffected. As designed, Admiral. This was the true elegance of the manifold technology. It hadn't harmed a single being aboard those ships. It had simply, temporarily, removed their ability to project power. All conclave vessels neutralize, Lieutenant Park confirmed. Total elapsed time, 27 seconds. Elena nodded and stood. Record for broadcast on all frequencies, all languages. The computer chirped acknowledgement, and she straightened her uniform before speaking. This is Admiral Elena Reyes of the United Earth ship Prometheus. What you have just experienced was not an attack. It was a demonstration of restraint. She paused, letting her words sink in. Across 347 vessels, thousands of beings from 17 different species were listening, their universal translators converting her words into their native tongues. Had we wished to destroy your fleet, we could have done so. Had we modified the manifold's phase variance by even 2%, your power cores would have initiated catastrophic overload sequences. But that is not our purpose. Elena began to pace slowly across the bridge, her voice steady and measured. The Prometheus was not built to conquer or intimidate. It was built to ensure that humanity would never again be at the mercy of those who consider us lesser beings. She stopped, facing the view screen directly. Your systems will restore themselves in precisely 6 hours. We suggest you use that time to reconsider your position regarding Earth's status in the conclave. We have always sought peaceful cooperation as equals, not subjugation or conflict. With a nod to Lieutenant Okafor, she ended the transmission. Send the coordinates for the Mars rendezvous point to all Prometheus-class vessels. Execute jump on my mark. Admiral, Commander Wei interjected. The interdiction field is still active. The boys weren't affected by the manifold. Elena smiled. They weren't supposed to be. Navigation. Initiate jump sequence. Jump sequence initiated, replied the navigation officer, her fingers dancing across her controls. But ma'am, the interdiction field will provide a perfect demonstration of what the Prometheus can really do. Elena finished for her. Execute jump. What happened next defied the laws of physics as understood by the conclave scientists. The Prometheus didn't attempt to power through the interdiction field, nor did it try to disrupt it. Instead, the ship seemed to momentarily exist in a different dimension altogether, slipping between the very fabric of space-time before reappearing near Mars, a maneuver that should have been impossible. Throughout conclave space, the reaction was immediate and visceral as sensor data from the blockade fleet reached their respective homeworlds. Military commands went to highest alert. Political leaders convened emergency sessions. Scientific councils pored over the readings, trying to understand how humans had achieved what their models deemed impossible. And everywhere, the same terrifying question echoed through the halls of power. If this was what humans demonstrated willingly, what were they still hiding? After Chen's pointed remarks about suppression, an uncomfortable silence fell over the chamber. He could feel the tensions among the different factions of the conclave. The militarists who wanted immediate action against Earth, the pragmatists who recognized the futility of such measures after the Neptune incident, and the progressives who had long advocated for Earth's full membership. The Kithran representative broke the silence, his four-limbed gait carrying him to the center of the chamber. Ambassador Chen speaks truth we have avoided acknowledging. The conclave's treatment of Earth has been inequitable. Murmurs of disagreement rippled through the chamber, but the Kithran raised all four hands for silence. I have reviewed the scientific data from the Neptune incident. The Prometheus technology represents an approach to physics that none of our species considered viable. We dismissed certain theoretical pathways because they contradicted our established models. Humans pursued them anyway. The Hadarian crystal form vibrated in a frequency pattern indicating deep distress. Are we to reward their recklessness by granting them equal status? They have violated the natural progression of technological development. Chen couldn't help but laugh at this, drawing shocked looks from several council members. Forgive me, counselor, but natural progression according to whom? The 17 species who founded the conclave have followed similar developmental paths because you shared knowledge freely among yourselves. Earth was deliberately excluded from that exchange. He stepped closer to the central podium, his voice dropping to a conversational tone that forced the council members to lean in. Did it ever occur to you that humanity's recklessness is actually our greatest strength? We question assumptions. We explore possibilities that others dismiss. We see obstacles as challenges rather than limitations. The Vordak military representative chittered angrily. This philosophical debate is irrelevant. The human fleet has demonstrated hostile capabilities against conclave forces. They must be what, exactly? Chen interrupted. You've seen what a single Prometheus-class vessel can do to your combined fleets, without firing a shot, without harming a single crew member. He let that sink in before continuing. Now imagine what 13 such vessels could accomplish if humanity actually harbored hostile intent. High Counselor Shrilvax's tentacles moved in a pattern Chen recognized as indicating internal conflict. What does Earth want, Ambassador? Truly. The same thing we've wanted from the beginning, Chen replied simply. To be treated as equals. To contribute to and benefit from galactic civilization without artificial constraints. The Zephyrian's translucent skin rippled as he processed this. And the Prometheus fleet. What assurances can Earth provide regarding these vessels? What assurances did the Conclave provide when it positioned peacekeeping fleets in Earth's sector? When it established military bases on Jupiter's moons? When it monitored our communications and restricted our development? Chen's voice remained calm despite the accusatory words. Trust must flow both ways, High Counselor. Shrilvax conferred briefly with the other council members before responding. The Conclave proposes the following. Earth will be granted provisional full membership with all associated rights and privileges. A joint commission will be established to study the Prometheus technology and establish safety protocols for its use. Chen smiled diplomatically. Earth accepts your first proposal with gratitude. Regarding the second, we welcome scientific exchange, but will not surrender control of our sovereign technology, any more than the Zephyrians would share control of their singularity drives, or the Hadarians, their crystal lattice computing. A subtle shift occurred in the chamber's atmosphere. For perhaps the first time, the conclave representatives were treating Chen, and by extension, humanity, as an equal negotiating partner rather than a petitioner seeking favors. As negotiations continued through the night, Chen received a priority message from Admiral Reyes. Phase 2 ready. Proceed at your discretion. Chen glanced up at the council members, who were engaged in heated debate about the specifics of Earth's membership status. They still didn't understand the true purpose behind the Prometheus. They saw it as a weapon, a bargaining chip, or at best a defensive measure. None of them had yet asked the critical question: why had humanity developed such technology in the first place? What had Earth scientists discovered that made them believe such extraordinary measures were necessary? They would learn soon enough. The demonstration at Neptune was just the opening act. The true revelation awaited. Elena studied the artifacts before her with growing concern. The resemblance was undeniable. Designs that echoed human aesthetics despite being created by an alien species 50 millennia ago. The neural pattern comparisons displayed by Xrilvax showed an uncanny similarity between human brain activity and the preserved precursor specimens. "How long have you known about this connection?" she asked, her voice steady despite the implications racing through her mind. Xrilvax's appendages moved in a pattern indicating discomfort. The first comparative analysis was conducted shortly after first contact with Earth. The results were disturbing enough that the High Council classified them at the highest security level. And based on this genetic similarity, you assumed we follow the same destructive path as the precursors. It wasn't a question. Elena was piecing together the Conclave's actions over the past 2 decades, the careful monitoring, the technological restrictions, the reluctance to grant Earth full membership. The statistical probability was significant. Xrilvax admitted. The precursors developed faster than any species the galaxy had known. They approached problems from perspectives that other species found incomprehensible. They created technologies that defied established physical models. His skin rippled with emotion. Just like humans. Elena moved to another display showing the approaching fleet's trajectory. These energy signatures. They're similar to the Prometheus, aren't they? The Zephyrian silence was answer enough. You realized what we'd discovered, Elena said, the final piece clicking into place. When you saw the Prometheus demonstrate its capabilities, you recognized the technology. A variation, Xrilvax clarified. More refined than what our records show of precursor vessels. But yes, the underlying principles appear similar. Elena laughed, though there was little humor in it. So that's why the Conclave reacted with such panic. Not just because we developed advanced technology, but because we'd independently recreated something similar to the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced. She turned to face the alien directly, her expression serious. But you missed something critical in your analysis, High Counselor. The Prometheus was never designed as a weapon of war. It was built as a shield. Xrilvax's translator struggled to convey his confusion. A shield? Against what? Elena gestured to the long-range sensor data. Against them. The returning precursors. Our deep space monitoring stations detected unusual gravitational anomalies at the galactic edge 5 years ago. Our scientists realized what they were seeing before yours did. The alien skin paled dramatically. Impossible. Your observation technology couldn't possibly. We repurposed the outdated gravitic sensors you provided us, Elena explained. Instead of using them as designed, our engineers reconfigured them into a linked array that extended their range by a factor of 50. We saw the precursor fleet gathering 3 years before your sensors detected them. Xrilvax seemed to shrink within himself as the implications sank in. You built the Prometheus knowing they were coming. Elena nodded. The manifold technology was developed specifically to counter precursor drive signatures. We didn't have enough historical data to be certain it would work, but the Neptune incident confirmed our theories. Why didn't you tell us? The question carried a complex mix of emotions: confusion, betrayal, and something like guilt. Would you have believed us? Elena asked gently. A primitive species claiming to have detected a threat your advanced civilization had missed. Or would you have assumed it was a ploy to gain access to restricted technology? Shrillvax had no answer, his silence acknowledgement enough. The irony, Elena continued, is that your efforts to contain us actually accelerated our development. When conventional paths were blocked, we explored unconventional ones. When you restricted our access to established technologies, we invented alternatives. She moved to the central console and activated a secure communication channel. This isn't just humanity's fight, Shrillvax. The precursors are coming for all of us. The Prometheus fleet was never meant to stand alone. It was designed as the first line of a unified defense. Elena's expression softened slightly. The question now is whether the Conclave can move past its fear of human potential and embrace it as an asset instead. Elena watched from the observation platform as teams of humans and aliens worked side by side in the massive construction bay. Below, the skeletal framework of the UES Defiance gleamed under the harsh industrial lighting, its central manifold core already pulsing with a faint blue glow as systems came online for preliminary testing. 3 weeks ago, they wanted this technology destroyed, Chen remarked as he joined her at the railing. Now they're helping build more of it. Elena nodded. Fear is a powerful motivator, but so is survival. The precursor threat changed everything. On the construction floor, a group of Kithran engineers clustered around a human technician who was explaining modifications to the manifold's resonance calibration system. Their multiple limbs moved in patterns of excitement as they grasped concepts that contradicted their established physical models, but produced undeniable results. Nearby, Zephyrian field manipulators, whose translucent bodies could safely channel enormous amounts of energy, worked alongside human power specialists to integrate the ship's distribution grid. What would have taken human engineers months to accomplish safely was being completed in days with Zephyrian assistance. The Hedarians are contributing their crystal lattice computing architecture, Chen said, checking his datapad. They'd found a way to integrate it with our quantum processing systems that increases efficiency by 42%. And the Vordak? Elena asked. Chen smiled, still suspicious, but they've assigned their best tactical analysts to work with our combat systems team. They've already identified 3 potential vulnerabilities in our defensive configuration that we overlooked. Elena's attention was drawn to a small commotion on the floor below. A Zephyrian supervisor was engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion with a human engineer. Instead of the diplomatic tension such a scene would have caused weeks ago, she was surprised to see both beings suddenly laugh, their difference apparently resolved through humor rather than protocol. They're starting to understand us, she observed. Not just our technology, but our approach to problems. It works both ways, Chen replied. Our team working on the Nyx homeworld has adopted their consensus-building methodology. They say it's eliminating design conflicts before they become issues. A holographic communication window appeared before them, displaying the face of Dr. Sharma, Earth's leading xenobiologist. Admiral, Ambassador, the genetic analysis results you requested are complete. Elena straightened. Go ahead, Doctor. We've confirmed that the similarity between human and precursor neural patterns is not coincidental. There appears to have been deliberate genetic engineering involved, not recent, but approximately 150,000 years ago. Chen frowned. That predates human civilization by more than 140,000 years. Precisely, Dr. Sharma continued. Whatever entity modified early human DNA was not the precursors we're facing now, but likely their ancestors. The modifications appear designed to enhance cognitive flexibility, innovative thinking, and adaptability. So we were engineered to think differently, Elena mused. To approach problems from perspectives other species wouldn't consider. It appears so. The question is why. And why were humans left to develop in isolation on Earth, while these genetic capabilities remained dormant for thousands of generations? Before either Elena or Chen could respond, An alert sounded throughout the shipyard. The primary monitor displayed a priority transmission from the long-range sensor network at the edge of conclave space. "The precursor scout vessels have accelerated," reported the Kithran sensor operator. His voice steadied despite the ominous news. "At current velocity, they will reach the outer conclave worlds in 19 days, not 30 as previously calculated." Alina exchanged a glance with Chen. "They've detected our preparations. Or they've detected the manifold energy signatures," Chen suggested. "If the technology is similar to their own, they'd recognize it." Alina activated the shipyard's general communication system. "Attention all personnel. Scout vessels accelerating. Construction schedule updated to priority Omega. Completion deadline for all Prometheus-class vessels now set at 15 days." Throughout the massive facility, both humans and aliens acknowledged the announcement and increased their pace. What had begun as reluctant cooperation was evolving into something more, a genuine alliance forged by shared purpose and mutual respect. The bridge of Defender 1 hummed with tense energy as the combined crew monitored the approaching precursor fleet. Alina stood at the central command station, reviewing tactical displays with her executive officer, Commander Wei, and her Zephyrian second, Commander Zelfar. "Their formation is unlike anything in our tactical database," Zelfar observed, his translucent appendages moving in patterns of concern. "They're arranging their vessels in some form of quantum-linked array." Wei nodded. "Similar to how we've positioned our Prometheus-class vessels, but with subtle differences in the resonance patterns." Alina studied the display. 14 Prometheus-class vessels had formed a defensive network at strategic points throughout conclave space, each commanding a support fleet of smaller vessels from all 18 species. Behind them, evacuations of the outermost conclave worlds continued as civilians moved toward the galactic core. "They're attempting to create a counter-manifold," she realized. "Their sensors have identified our technology, and they're adapting to neutralize it." "As we expected," Wei replied. "That's why we incorporated the phase-shifting capabilities." Alina tapped her communicator. "All Defender vessels implement Protocol Chimera. Randomize manifold frequencies according to the distributed sequence." Throughout conclave space, the 14 Prometheus-class ships simultaneously altered their energy signatures, shifting to patterns that would be harder for the precursors to counter. It was a defensive measure developed jointly by human and Kithran scientists during the frantic construction period. "Admiral," called the communications officer, "incoming transmission from the precursor flagship. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, all known languages." Alina straightened her uniform. On screen, the main view screen flickered to life, revealing a being that resembled a human but with subtle differences: skin too smooth, eyes too large, proportions slightly wrong in ways that triggered unconscious discomfort. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that seemed to bypass the ears and resonate directly in the brain. "Descendants," it began, the translation struggling with concepts that defied easy expression. "You have awakened the potential we seeded. You have recreated the technologies we left dormant in your cognitive patterns. Now you will join us in the Great Ascension." Alina kept her expression neutral despite the chill that ran down her spine. "This is Admiral Alina Reyes of the United Conclave Defense Force. Your fleet has entered sovereign space without authorization. State your intentions clearly." The precursor's expression shifted to something approximating amusement. "Intentions. We have returned to reclaim what was always ours. The experiment has concluded successfully. The test subjects, you humans, have proven the viability of our approach." Zelfar vibrated with tension beside her. "Test subjects. The genetic modifications," Alina murmured, the pieces falling into place. "They engineered humanity as an experiment in cognitive development, left us to evolve in isolation, then returned to see what we'd become." The precursor continued. "Your species was designed to innovate where others stagnated, to find solutions where others accepted limitations. You have fulfilled your purpose admirably. Now you will be integrated into our collective." Alina's eyes narrowed. "And the other conclave species?" Irrelevant. Evolutionary dead ends. They will be permitted to exist in designated reservations if they accept their natural place in the hierarchy. Alina exchanged glances with her mixed-species bridge crew. The Precursor's casual dismissal of 17 advanced civilizations as irrelevant confirmed what they had feared. This wasn't a return of long-lost relatives. It was an invasion by beings who viewed the galaxy as their laboratory and its inhabitants as specimens. "We decline your offer," Alina replied firmly. "Humanity stands with the Conclave. We are not your experiment to control." The Precursor's expression hardened. "You cannot decline. It is your purpose, your destiny." "No," Alina countered. "What makes humans special isn't just our capacity for innovation. It's our ability to choose our own path. You may have engineered our cognitive potential, but you don't control what we do with it." She signaled to cut the transmission and turned to her crew. "Battle stations. Implement Defense Plan Omega." Throughout Conclave space, thousands of vessels moved into their predetermined positions. The greatest fleet ever assembled. An alliance of 18 species united by common cause, prepared to face the creators who had returned to claim their creation.